You ever feel like everything's just falling apart? Almost like you're in the middle of some kind of, I don't know, mental breakdown. It
Hmm.
feels chaotic, it's uncomfortable, maybe even a bit scary. But what if that intense turmoil isn't actually a sign you're failing? What if it's really a crucial step towards, well, massive growth?
Yeah. What if those moments are actually signs of an emotional breakthrough?
Exact.
That's a fascinating perspective, and it's exactly what we're exploring today. We're drawing our insights from a specific source, Chapter 32 of Brianna Wiest's collection, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive really is to unpack the 12 specific indicators this chapter lays out.
12 signs.
Yeah, and the essay makes this really compelling case that the messy, turbulent experiences aren't just random struggle. They're actually precise signals that you are on the edge, the precipice of something fundamentally new. So what does Weiss's text actually tell us are these powerful, often kind of counterintuitive signs that you're heading for breakthrough?
Okay, let's dive in.
Let's jump right in. The very first sign this essay points to is, well, it's a big one. You're questioning everything.
Right. And the way the source described this, it isn't just mild curiosity,
Hmm.
It's like a really deep-seated shift. You find yourself moving beyond what you were simply taught, or maybe what just appears on the surface.
Uh-huh.
You start exploring new frameworks, maybe philosophical ideas, spirituality, different political thoughts, and you start realizing just how much you previously just accepted without really examining it.
Wow.
It's framed as this powerful opening to understanding there's a much, much vaster reality out there than you maybe initially perceived. It's that moment of discovering you truly didn't know what you didn't know.
That realization alone must feel like a huge shift. Okay, so hand in hand with that kind of questioning, the source highlights a second sign, realizing there's a difference between happy thoughts and happy feelings.
Yes, and this one's crucial. The essay argues that trying to force yourself to think happy thoughts often ties you to specific outcomes.
Right, things you want to happen.
Exactly. Things in the future.
Yeah,
And then, when those don't materialize exactly as you planned, well, you end up unhappy.
makes sense.
So the source's point is that true happiness,
Mhm.
at least in this context, comes more from simply experiencing and, enjoying the present moment.
Rather than pinning your hopes on potentials.
Right. Rather than being dependent on potential future events or things not happening right now, recognizing that difference, the futility of forcing a mental state versus allowing a genuine emotional one that's presented as a key sign of internal change.
Okay. And as you start questioning the external world and examining your internal state more closely, the source says you begin noticing a third sign. You're starting to see patterns.
Ah, yes. These are those recurring themes in your life, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it shows up in relationships or career choices, maybe even just your reactions or internal beliefs that keep popping up. The essay suggests these patterns aren't just random bad luck. They're actually products of your underlying beliefs. Beliefs about yourself, about others, maybe about how life works.
So the breakthrough part
The
is,
indicator here is that dawning realization that your beliefs are creating these cycles. And the implication, of course, is that changing the belief might actually change the pattern itself.
interesting. Okay, now, sign number 4 might feel a bit alarming at first glance because the source states, you feel irrationally angry.
Yeah, and it actually calls anger a good emotion in this specific context.
Which is surprising.
It is. And that's a really critical distinction the source makes. It's not just any anger. It specifies it's the kind that bubbles up when you realize you're not fundamentally angry at the world, maybe, but perhaps more at yourself.
For what? Like,
Well, maybe for staying small, for accepting less than you deserve, maybe for not seeing things sooner. The source contrasts this powerful anger with what it calls its younger siblings.
dissatisfaction, resentment.
Exactly. Those feelings are more passive. They don't really spur action in the same way.
Right, and here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The essay argues that anger is the emotion that actually compels action.
Mm.
It, quote, burns through you, according to Wiest, and delivers you somewhere new. It's presented as the force that's strong enough to break inertia when those lesser emotions just aren't cutting it.
So feeling this powerful, maybe seemingly unwarranted anger isn't presented as a problem to be solved, but more as a catalyst, a sign that you're about to make a significant move or change, perhaps one you've been resisting subconsciously.
Okay, building on that feeling that maybe things are bigger or need to change, the fifth sign is kind of a classic existential turning point. You're starting to question, is this all there is?
Yes. This often comes up when you look at the standard routine,
Mm.
sleep, eat, work, repeat.
The daily grind.
Yeah, the grind. And you start wondering if there isn't some deeper meaning or maybe a greater reality available beyond just that functional existence. It's a kind of restlessness, really, that signals a search for something more.
Definitely felt that one. Okay, sign six is really counterintuitive. I found this one fascinating. The source says you can experience paralysis even when good things are happening.
Right. The quote is, you had the million-dollar idea, found the relationship, the big break, and all of a sudden you're paralyzed.
Yeah, what's that about?
Well, the essay labels this resistance, but then it immediately reframes it. It calls it a form of balanced fear.
Balanced fear.
Think about it. When you deeply, deeply desire something, and then it actually becomes real,
Mm.
the source suggests you perceive not just the happiness associated with it, but an almost equal measure of fear.
Fear of losing it.
Yeah.
Or,
Maybe fear of losing it, fear of it changing you, fear of not being worthy. It could be complex. But the point is, it's not necessarily that you're resisting the positive change itself. It's more that you finally clearly identified something you profoundly want. And the natural kind of balanced reaction is to feel fear right alongside that intense desire.
so the intensity of the want creates the intensity of the fear.
That seems to be the idea presented. It's a natural consequence of achieving something deeply desired.
Wow, okay. That puts a completely different spin on feeling stuck when things seem to be going right. All right, moving on. Sign 7 can feel really confusing when it happens. It seems like your emotional state is unwarranted.
Yes, this is when you feel anxious or maybe depressed or you have these fears that just don't seem linked to any obvious external trigger.
Like nothing bad is actually happening, but you feel awful.
Exactly. And the source offers an explanation.
Yeah.
You can't make immediate sense of these feelings because you're actually in the process of developing the capacity to understand your emotions on a much deeper level.
So it's like learning a new skill.
Kind of. You're building the skill itself, the emotional intelligence muscle, you might say.
Huh?
And initially, that process makes the feelings seem disconnected or unwarranted because you haven't fully grasped the underlying connections yet.
Okay. And as you're navigating these sort of confusing internal states, the eighth sign the source identifies is feeling profoundly uncertain about your own identity. You're uncertain about who you really are.
Right. This often happens when you start recognizing how much you've defined yourself based on, well, external factors.
Like what other people think?
Yeah, how others see you, or maybe what you think you should want or be
Huh.
based on societal expectations or family pressure.
Uh-huh.
The essay suggests this uncertainty isn't necessarily bad. It's the space that's created when you realize there's a gap between that external definition and who you authentically are, or what you truly desire deep down.
It's like shedding an old skin.
Exactly. And you haven't quite fully found or settled into the new one yet. That space in between is uncertainty.
Makes sense. And this whole process of uncovering authenticity, it seems, can stir up the past. Because sign 9 is, you're experiencing feelings and fears you had when you were a kid.
Mm-hmm. The source argues these aren't actually new issues popping up out of nowhere. They're old ones resurfacing.
Things you thought you dealt with.
Or maybe never even consciously realized were there. Why does it suggest these childhood feelings and fears never truly disappeared? They were simply buried, operating beneath the surface.
And kind of silently guiding your life choices.
Precisely. Silently influencing things without your conscious awareness. So the breakthrough sign here is your growing awareness of their continued presence and their impact on your current life.
Okay. Sign 10 focuses on a very particular type of fear. You're terrified of loss right now. But it's specific. It's the fear of losing something external you believe is essential to your emotional well-being, like something that will save you.
Yeah, that save part is key. This fear, according to the source, tends to emerge when you're right on the verge of realizing that ultimately nothing external can truly save you emotionally.
That you have to rely on yourself.
Fundamentally, yes. The essay argues the fear isn't really about the loss of the external thing itself, the job, the relationship, whatever it is. It's more about being forced to accept that reality, the reality of self-reliance, before you think you're ready.
So it's the fear of having to stand fully on your own emotional ground.
That's the interpretation offered.
Yeah.
The fear of accepting that ultimate responsibility for your own emotional state.
Wow. That connects back really powerfully to that idea of authentic self and questioning those external definitions we rely on. Okay, sign 11 is about letting go, but the source redefines it a bit. You're giving up on the things you need to give up on.
Right, and Wiest is careful here. She clarifies she's not talking about abandoning genuine dreams or healthy connections.
So what is it about then?
The essay defines this specific type of giving up as giving up on the idea that these things will be something more than what they are.
Ah, okay. Releasing expectations.
It's exactly releasing expectations or maybe attachments to things, people, situations, beliefs that aren't truly serving you anymore, or perhaps were never meant to be something other than what they are.
Got it.
And the source explicitly points out that giving up often has this negative connotation, but in this context, it's framed as a fundamentally healthy and necessary act. It's letting go of what isn't right for you anymore.
A healthy pruning, almost.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay. And finally, the 12th sign. This one feels like it acts as a powerful summary point from the source. You've decided you're not going to be the victim of your own mind anymore.
Yes. This is really where the essay's core argument comes together, I think. Wiest contends that those really intense periods of turmoil, the ones that feel like breakdowns, they only occur on the edge, on the precipice of breakthroughs.
Only.
That's the assertion. They are always a signal that deep, fundamental change is happening. Because, the logic goes, if change wasn't imminent, that difficult state wouldn't feel like a crisis. It would just feel like you're normal.
Ah, okay. I see.
So this decision, this 12th find, means you are consciously or maybe unconsciously choosing to move past that old normal.
Yeah.
You're inherently shifting towards what the source describes, quite hopefully, as bigger, better, brighter, happier things.
So when we pull all this together,
Mm.
what does all of this from Wiest's essay really mean? I mean, it offers a really profound reframe, doesn't it?
It really does.
The discomfort, that anger you don't understand, the fear of things actually going right, the questioning of everything you thought was solid ground. These aren't just random, unpleasant experiences or proof you're somehow failing.
Right. This deep dive into the source material really highlights how, according to Wiest's perspective, these very challenging internal states and experiences are potentially the precise signals indicating you're in a process of fundamental transformation.
Yeah.
What feels like you're falling apart might actually be the necessary dismantling, the taking things apart. That has to happen before you can build something new and more authentic.
So as you, listening, reflect on these 12 signs from the essay, from that deep questioning to feeling those unwarranted emotions or fearing loss, maybe consider how framing these difficult times as potential indicators of impending breakthrough, rather than just plain breakdown, might actually change how you experience them in your own life. It's a shift in perspective.
Absolutely. And the source leaves us with that really potent final thought. Intense emotional turmoil, the kind that really feels like a breakdown, only happens on the precipice of a breakthrough. Could accepting that premise, just entertaining that idea, fundamentally alter how you approach and navigate your most challenging internal periods?